Good morning and welcome to another edition of Get Arrow, Get Secure. My name is Dennis Cirillo. I'm the Executive Director of Operations here at Arrow Security. With me is the Chief of Operations, Pete Curcio.
Good morning.
Mike Blangiforti's on vacation, so we're taking his show. Let's start talking about some safe driving tips this morning. Most of them are common sense, however, we like to go over a few. Pete, drinking and driving.
Ironically, Dennis, I just got back from St. Martin, and when I rented the car, one of the things that the rental agent said to me, he said, it's okay to drink and drive in the car. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, well, here in St. Martin, it's okay to drink and drive as long as you're not drunk and the alcohol could be visible, which to me sounded kind of crazy. And it brought me back to a time when I was, growing up in Queens and DWI wasn't as enforced. But it seemed crazy to me, and it brings you to DWI. And the concerns with DWI and how, important it is to pay attention to what we do here in the States.
I'm really shocked that something like that would go on. I'm sure that they're aware that when you do drink and you're driving, you're obviously your reaction time, everything else is impaired, and it seems kind of weird that. And I would say a civilized society, all right, which I'm sure
it's a third world country. Dennis.
It is. It just seems weird. But here we know that it's illegal. And
well, I'll tell you something else that brings the point home. I used to teach defensive driving,
right?
And one of the things that they did during the course, under control experiment in a race course, was do a defensive driving test with 12 students without alcohol, and it rated their performance and objectives and how they did on the course. And then they asked them how they do with 1, 2, 3 beers. And they all said, I would say just about half said, I think I could drive better with 1 or 2 beers. And what they did was give them the alcohol, put them on a track, again, a controlled environment with cones, and every single one performed worse than that. And you could see their attitudes change in the vehicles, where before, without the alcohol, they were driving serious. They were focused on the task, and then once they had the alcohol, you see them laughing and giggling and being nonchalant in the car.
Yeah, sure. So, it kind of reminds me that, if you're out there and you are having to deal with a social event or whatever, make sure you have a designated driver. I mean, these type of things, I believe the statistics was 30% of all auto accident fatalities in the United States involved drivers that were in some way impaired.
And the statistics are about 1,000 people a year in each state die in auto accidents. So the people that are scared of going on airplanes or scared of going on trains or even a boat, there's much more danger involved in getting in a vehicle.
Sure. Wow. Good point. Speeding. I mean, obviously, again, we want to maintain a safe speed while you're driving, particularly on highways where you do see people driving at excessive rates of speed. Obviously, the faster you're going, the less time you have to react.
Yeah, of course. A good safe distance, they suggest, is 3 seconds behind the car in front of you, measured by some type of marker on the road. So if you see a telephone pole, count 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, and you'll be a good distance behind the person in front of you.
And also, I remember when I first started driving, they were kind of talking about 10 miles every 10 miles per hour or whatever it was. I can't remember now, but a safe distance. In other words, if you're driving 60 miles an hour, maybe have 6 car lengths behind you're behind the other vehicle, about 6 car lengths.
Yeah, well, at that rate, at any rate of speed, the 3 second rule will work out good. I wanted to point out something that's very important to our current society, which is texting while driving. This is something that a lot of people are getting tickets for. This is something that a lot of people are getting involved in accidents. And Dennis and I, as former law enforcement officers, the first thing that the responding officer is going to do is take a look at your cell phone, take a look at what you did on the what were you doing, and certainly if the other driver that you're involved in saw you texting on the phone, they're going to make that point.
And not only texting while driving, Pete. I mean, you see a lot of distracted driving. Women putting on makeup. So there are a number of things.
Did you see my wife this morning?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't see her. But it happens. Not the texting, eating. You see people on the highway eating, putting on makeup. So avoid distractions while you're driving. The hand positioning on the wheel, Pete, I remember when I was first starting to drive, they suggested 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. on the steering wheel. So, you're kind of like 10 and 2 up here.
Yep.
But now with the I'm sorry, what is it? The airbags.
Yes.
They suggest now that you really should be at 9 and 3, to avoid possibly blocking that airbag.
Yep.
Drowsiness while you're driving. I mean, obviously,
Can be just as bad as drinking and driving.
Sure can. I mean, pull over. I know around the holidays, a lot of the state programs, they have these coffee stops that you can take advantage of. But the simple rule is if you're drowsy and you're tired, pull over, get off the road.
If you get to a point where you're resting one eye at a time, or
bad news,
yeah.
Bad news.
Yeah.
And wearing seatbelts. Obviously, wear your seatbelt. I remember being in an accident a number of years ago where I was a passenger in a vehicle, wasn't wearing a seatbelt and hit the windshield, and it was a lesson well learned. And ever since that day, I make sure that even if I'm moving, to move the car 15 feet or so, it just becomes a habit.
Yeah, and that brings me back to St. Martin. Seatbelts are not required for any passengers in the car. And I know 30 years from now in St. Martin they will require that because it's lesson learned once you start running the stats. And when I was growing up, probably when you were growing up, seatbelts weren't required either. So the statistics prove that seatbelts save lives. The argument about, hey, listen, I'm going to get buried in water and drown, not a good argument. The argument that I'm just going to get something from the store, I'm 2 miles away. Most accidents, from my experience, occur within 3 miles of your residence.
Absolutely. The other point we'd like to make is we spoke about following too closely, but be extra careful in bad weather. Today, for some reason, I see people with SUVs. I think for some reason, they feel like they're invincible. They're flying in snow. I'm in an SUV, and it just doesn't work. I mean, you may have more vehicle around you, but if you get involved in an accident, which you're likely to, if you're driving crazy in bad weather, I mean, the SUV is only going to protect you so much. Watch out for the other guy. I think that's important.
Defensive driving.
Absolutely. Don't make assumptions while you're driving. If somebody has their blinker on and they're approaching an intersection, don't assume, or if they don't have their blinker on, don't assume that they're not going to turn. Be aware of everybody
Just
around you.
Just because there's a yellow light or a red light, don't make an assumption that the person's going to stop.
Exactly. Even a stop sign. I mean, people drive right through them. Defensive driving, we kind of hit on it. Safe distance, not speeding, remaining calm in frustrating situations such as traffic. You see people getting into these road rage things.
Dennis, I want to take a minute to just talk about pulling over with the roadside emergency.
Sure.
Again, Dennis being in New York City Police, when a cop pulls over on the side of the road and he has his flashes on, what happens? Somebody that's not paying attention is driving down the road. They see lights on the side of the road, and they don't really immediately understand that the car is not on the side of the road. They think it's in the road, and they think it's moving, so they don't have their distance right, and they inevitably smash into the back of the car on the road. I see some families that do it, and I see other families that don't do it. They'll pull off along the side of the road, and then they'll stay in the car. What you should do, and I maintain flares in all my vehicles, and I'm suggesting that the audience do the same thing as well too. Immediately pull the car over. If you're not in a safe area, then pull it over somewhere where if it damages the rim or the tire, it's better to spend $150 on a tire or a rim than to put your family at peril. Once you're over to a safe place, ignite a flare so others know that, hey, listen, this car is definitely stopped and definitely having a hazard condition. Even raise the hood, even if there's not an engine problem at this point, and then get everybody out of the vehicle over to a safe place. Otherwise, you're asking for trouble with somebody rear-ending you on the side of the road with your people and persons in the car.
Which brings up another good point. I mean, New York State just recently changed the law with emergency vehicles being over on the side of the road. So if you do see a police officer stopped in the shoulder of the road, the law now requires you to move over a lane. So make sure you know that. You see a car pulled over to the side of the road, whether it be a traffic stop, an accident, whatever it is, and that police vehicle is on the shoulder of the road, you're supposed to move over out of that lane. So try to do that. And another good point about that is if you do get into an accident, pull the cars off the road. The police will be able to reconstruct the accident. They don't need the vehicles to be in the roadway. It only obstructs traffic. It obstructs emergency vehicles getting to the scene, whether it be an ambulance or whatever, and it's going to slow down their response. So let's pull off the road. All right, medication. I mean, obviously, if you're on a new medication and you're driving, you should find out from the doctor whether it impairs your ability or not. I mean, a lot of people are driving impaired because of legal medication, and that obviously is a problem. The proper positioning of yourself in a vehicle, as far as the seat, you should be comfortable in the car. All right, you should be able to reach out and obviously put your wrist over the top of the steering wheel. That's a good length to be away from there, so you have complete control of the car. In addition, the seat position, you should be able to reach the brake and the pedal, obviously, without having to move your legs. You should just be able to swing your foot back and forth from there. So make sure you do that. Long trips, make sure you pack your car with either first aid kits, flashlights, blankets. I mean, if you are going away and there is a problem and it is a long trip, you want to have the necessary things in the vehicle should you break down in a remote location. Let's talk about child safety seats.
Just going back
Sure.
to that, something I do with my kids' cars and my cars, in with the registration, I always put $10 cash. A lot of times you'll get stuck and someone won't accept the credit card. You have an issue with your credit card. You'll be short on whatever, just enough cash to get you a gallon or 2 gallons of gas for the event that. And in metro area like ours, it's not as concerning. But in rural areas, in Long Island and other places where they may not accept credit cards, it's good to keep a couple dollars cash in your car.
Good point. Good point. Child safety seats. I recently just found out my daughter went for one of these inspections, and they told her not to leave the car safety seat on either the extreme right or left of the rear seat. They suggested the middle of the car.
Right.
And it kind of makes sense when you think about it. I mean, God forbid.
It makes a lot of sense. It's inconvenient for the parent, but
It is. It is.
But the whole objective is to keep the people safe in the vehicle. So take the extra steps and make sure that the child's in the middle.
And know your vehicle. Know what you're driving, what kind of brakes it has. I remember years ago when we first started driving, we were told to pump the brakes. Mm-hmm. All right, if you were sliding or something like that, pump the brakes. Now we have anti-lock braking systems.
It does it automatically.
Does it automatically.
And know which car is good in what weather. Front wheel drive, rear wheel drive. The night of Hurricane Sandy, I went home and saw an elderly woman who had no business being on the road. Stuck on Indian Head Road, and after myself and 3 other passerbys helped her out, she said, I didn't know my vehicle's capabilities and got stuck in a snowbank thinking that she had 4-wheel drive when in fact she didn't.
Which brings up another point. I mean, you talk about elderly people not being on the road. I think it's extremely important today that when you do get older, that you realize your own capabilities. And, sometimes it might be wise to just say, you know what, my reaction time isn't as well. I can't see as well. Maybe you just restrict yourself, from night driving, or maybe it's time to hang the keys up.
Right.
And
right.
I think some people don't really realize that.
Or asking for help. If you have these appointments, have somebody pick you up, take you somewhere. My father recently had some eye surgery and was actually wanted to attempt to drive home himself after having one eye impaired and was fighting the assistance, and there's plenty of people that can help him. But relating that to the audience at large, don't be afraid to ask somebody to take, if you have an endoscopy or whatever type of procedure, make arrangements with somebody so you can have safe transport back and forth, because if you take care of the medical condition you're going to see the doctor for, but get into a serious accident, it's not going to help you going forward.
Absolutely. And just talking about driver's ed, I think it's a great program. I have tried to teach my own children how to drive, and I think as parents sometimes we're a little bit less forgiving, if you will. All right,
Yes.
It may not, it may not be the right thing to do, and I strongly suggest things like driver's ed, and driver's ed will give you your children a wealth of knowledge. I think that there's some things that you pick up that people may not be aware of. For example, if you do pull up into the intersection and you're going to turn, don't turn the wheels before you're going to turn while you're waiting there, which a lot of people do. They don't realize that if they do get rear-ended, the vehicle is going to be pushed in the direction of the wheels. So if you get rear-ended at an intersection and your wheels are turned, you're going to be pushed into the lane of oncoming traffic. So little things like that, I think it's important to know and practice good safety tips. The other thing with driving I like to do is use available information that you have out there. Your eyes should be scanning the road. All right, if you're coming up to parked cars and the sun casts shadows, then look down at the ground, because somebody could be standing there and you'll pick up their shadow and you'll know somebody's there. So just little tips like that. Tinted windows. I remember years ago the Police Benevolent Association pushed very hard not to have the back windows of vehicles tinted so dark, and that the police officer, when he was coming to do a traffic stop, was unable to see into the car. So I know today a lot of the kids out there like to get very dark tinted windows. Realize that it's against the law. You could be summoned for it, and it's a safety hazard for police officers. And really the last thing I'd like to close with, Pete, is what I do when I'm stopped by a police officer, because you do get stopped for whatever it might be. And I think it's important to understand the general public that the police officer is fearful when he's making the stop, fearful for his own safety, and the things that you can do to kind of put him at ease is, when you pull over immediately when you can, if it's safe to do so. If it's not safe to do so, then drive off the road to an area that is safe. Turn your light on in the interior of the vehicle so he has a good sight line of what's going on in the vehicle. And the other thing I like to do is keep your hands visible to the police officer. So put them up on top of the wheel. He'll see your hands are there. He doesn't have anything to worry about. You'll notice that when people go into their glove compartment, the officer may be standing there with his hands on his weapon, fearful that you may come out with a weapon. Yep. So those are just some of the things to do when you do get stopped by the police.
And I'd just like to add two things in closing, Dennis, that are not on the radar. What I do with my own children with their vehicles is, before I even let them drive any car, we go through the ritual of changing a tire, where in the driveway we'll make sure the equipment is there. They'll understand that how to take the tire down from underneath the car. In the particular case with my daughter's truck, how to get the wheel off, how to jack it up, where to jack it up, and you may say, well, she may not have to change a tire because we're a member of roadside assistance. We could be in a remote area. Or it could be, during a crisis where response won't come right away, and she may not have the strength to turn the knobs herself or the lugs on a tire, but she can help direct responders to put the jack here, do this, do that. Another thing is key control. Being in the security business, we're very big on key control. I have a backup key for all of my vehicles, either in a lockbox at home or in places that don't have the remote, a key wired under the chassis of the vehicle. So there's never an issue. I had a friend who just lost, actually one of our co-workers here, lost a key last week to their car, and a $350 lesson taught them that they should have a backup system for their key.
That's a great idea, because I remember being stuck on the Belt Parkway. Went out to get a hot dog real quick, locked the keys in the car, and I had to wait. Right. And I waited some time.
An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Absolutely. All great tips. Listen, join us next time on Get Arrow, Get Secure. And thank you for watching.
And I hope Mike is driving safe on his vacation.
Absolutely. Take care.